From Central Indiana's #1 news source, this is Fox 59 Tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Fox 59 Tonight. I'm Cameron Riddle. Thank you for downloading our streaming app on your smart TV. It's called Fox 59 now. Thanks for downloading it on your Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, or on your Samsung TV. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss any of the conversations that we have every night at 8 o'clock right here on Fox 59 Tonight. On this show, we'll talk about education, the state of education in Indiana. There's a lot that is happening. You're hearing all the headlines, especially now that we're starting the school year, but we're also coming off of a legislative session that made impacts to every school budget across the state, no matter what type of school, what size of the school. And then you're in that process, you're hearing all these different forms of school. You're hearing about private schools and charter schools and innovation schools and township schools and public schools. And what does it really all mean? Over the coming weeks, we'll introduce you to folks from each of those types of schools so we can learn about them, see what the difference is, see what makes each of them unique. And I think over time we'll also find what a lot of them have in common. Today we're going to start with private schools, and we're going to go to a school that's not too far from us here on the northwest side of Indianapolis, to the Genius School. That is a private school that is now in its second year of being a private school. To talk about the journey, talk about what a private school is, because these folks also know what it's like to be a charter school, so a very unique perspective with it. We talked to Shaquan Eli II. He is the chancellor and founder of the Genius School and is with us here today at Fox 59. Shaquan, thanks for coming on.
It's all my pleasure, brother. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely glad to have you. This is something that I try to explain to people who are trying to figure out, okay, what's a charter school? Now, is that a private school? Can anybody go there? Do I have to pay tuition? There's all these different terms. And to help people understand, one, what is a private school? And then what is the Genius School?
Sure. So when you consider a private school, really what we're talking about is choice. Families have options now. As you just went through the plethora of different options, Indiana sits uniquely in the country as one of those states that have a lot of options and choice for families. And so when we're talking about a private school, it really is school choice.
Pull that microphone closer to you, Shaquan. I'm sorry. Pull that.
Those schools, those private schools, give families a little bit more options based on maybe they want a different experience educationally. Maybe they are wanting more of their values to be in that school experience. And so private schools give families an opportunity to do that. For us at the Genius School, private means personal. And it gives us an opportunity, because we are a faith-based school, to lead with that foundation of faith.
Now, you were last year, or was it? This is second year, right?
Second year, yeah.
We're in the second full year of being a private school. But before that, you were a charter school, a public charter school. What's the difference?
Good question. So charters are public schools, right? They just have a little bit more autonomy. They have a big brother, if you will. So they have a sponsor or an authorizer that is responsible for that school's development, for that school's they are measured. They have to do what they say they're going to do. And so that authorizer is responsible to ensure that happens. Now, those public charter schools still have a board. They still have to answer to a governing body, but it's not as bureaucratic as, say, the big townships. So they're able to make decisions on the fly that's based on what is happening in that school or that small network of schools. Private schools are similar, except they don't get the public funding. They have the tuition, and so they may still have a board, but they still have that independence and that autonomy to be able to make real decisions, quick decisions based on their school community.
And I would say the easiest distinction between a private school and a public school of any kind, charter, township, whatever, is that, as you just mentioned, to go to a private school, you pay tuition to go there.
That's correct. That's correct.
How does that and by the way, an example of schools like that would be like your oftentimes religious schools, so your Roncollis, cathedrals, Park Tutors, Heritage Christian, Covenant Christian. um, I could go on, but I don't. I think I've made my point. But what does students paying to go to your school allow you to do differently than if you received tax dollars?
That's a great question. So the fundraising piece, and this is one of the things that I've learned the most of being public versus private. There's a lot to make up when you are not public and you're not getting those public funded dollars. But the tuition, it can be a barrier for many families who may be at the poverty line or those working middle class families. It could be a barrier, but thankfully now with some of the legislation that is removed with those vouchers, the school choice vouchers. So many of those families, and I believe that irrespective of affluence versus that social economic status, those families can access the tuition now because with those school vouchers, that school choice award, it's pennies to the dollar. So they can receive support to pay off that tuition almost entirely or for the majority.
So you used terms that maybe on purpose somebody started to conflate the two, and I'm wondering now that you are running a private school, um, how what the result of that is. So vouchers and school choice vouchers. When people hear school choice and they think vouchers, they think that those are going to charter schools.
Okay.
That's been my experience. People think the vouchers are for charter schools. Vouchers are for private schools, right?
They're for private schools to make it accessible
Right.
for those families who maybe otherwise couldn't afford private experience.
So do people I'm wondering with the confusion, do people realize that the vouchers are for opportunities? I'm wondering if people are taking advantage of the opportunity and if they know that like if this is to go to the genius school. I'm wondering if they realize that.
I think that this platform and what you're doing is really important to help families understand because here's the thing. All of those models that you mentioned, whether it's traditional public, whether it's the charter innovators, or whether it's a private school, they all have success, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
some really good ones in each one of those categories. There's some not so good ones in each one of those categories.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that families are able to choose, to make a choice. I may want a faith-based experience for my family because those are the morals and the values that I want. I may want a small, intimate setting
Mm-hmm.
like the Genius School offers for for my children, and you can only get that
Mm-hmm.
through a private school parochial circumstance, whereas maybe in the public, traditional public, you might have a what's it called a model that is specific, a specialty school or a magnet school. Maybe I want the kid to go to a school that focuses on music or something like that, and those exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then with your public charters, they're able to innovate as well. Maybe it's a STEM school. So the point is that families now can do their research, and we have so much choice across the city, and they can send their child to a school that they desire. It's not just based on zip code anymore. At one
Mm-hmm.
point, based on where you live in that zip code, your child either had to go to that neighborhood school
Mm-hmm.
or they were bussed out somewhere, and that could be a 20-30 minute drive
Mm-hmm.
that your child was going to. And so now there's just so many more options, and I hope that people watch this so that they can understand the difference and learn that any of these models are accessible, but it's all about what we know.
So and we were looking at some video of you guys there at the Genius School in its current form. What changed about the Genius School from being a charter school to now a private school outside of the administrative or the title? What changed for you guys?
So as a public school, and even before that, as I've been developing this model over the last 15 years or so, but as a public school, we had to hide some of the medicine in the candy. We are a holistic institution. We're speaking to the whole child, regardless of whether we have a foot in public or a foot in private. We're still speaking to the holistic nature of children and not just a statistic, a I learn or I read score. There's much more to the children than that. And so we are creating those kind of environments that speak to the holistic nature of the human being. What really changed was, as I mentioned, now we can be bold about, our values and the morals, the ethics of the school are based on biblical principle, and based on faith. And so we can lead with that. And that really makes a difference for the community and for the culture and for the movement, this educational movement that we're in the midst of.
Um, as you said, there's really no boundaries now with where students live. I know of some private schools. I know of a private school in Carmel where kids come all the way from Franklin Township on the southeast side of Indianapolis to go to school. What has been your success? Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. What's been the success? Have you seen a difference, or like, I should say, have you seen success now that you've switched from being a charter to a private school?
Success, absolutely. Our children are averaging 2 years of growth in a single calendar year,
Hmm.
and we have some academic innovations that have been very successful as well. And so, with that, in other iterations, we may not have had the opportunity to innovate to that degree and that level, and so we're very excited about that. And then also being here in Eagle Creek, it's a
Hmm.
beautiful campus that we are. So we're really excited about the future, about where we are, and kind of being at this intersection of faith, of science, and cultural relevance for the school community that's developing here.
Well, I forgot we didn't tell people where you are because you're actually co-housed with a church.
Yes, we are on the beautiful campus of New Life Worship Center, right up North Lafayette Road.
Um, is um, the charter school, public school, private school landscape, the school choice landscape in Indiana, what do you see the future of it as? Some people see a world where um, all the schools can work together and coexist together. Others see a world where um, private schools are aiming to wipe out everybody and everybody will be private, or charter schools are going to wipe out everybody and everything's going to be a charter. What do you see the future as?
Yeah, I've heard all of those rumors there, and for me, all of these iterations matter. And so, to your point that you made, I think that it's going to be necessary for schools to learn how to collaborate in ways that are different from the traditional past. We've experienced that. As a charter school, we were housed at Geo, so that
Mhm.
was a very unique relationship. That
Because you have two charter
you have two
schools.
charter schools operating in separate charter schools, right?
Hmm.
We have separate models, we have separate cultures, and we coexisted for 2 years. And I think it was a very positive experience
Hmm.
for both schools. And so I think there's that more of that kind of collaboration may be necessary as we move forward. Different legislation, who knows what happens there? But all of the children in Indianapolis are our children, and
Hmm.
so what you've seen in the past, particularly as more and more charters saturate the market,
Hmm.
is very cutthroat because that's how you get funding is
Hmm.
through who's in the seat,
A lot of
right?
competition.
A lot of competition, and certain sides of town are completely saturated,
Hmm.
right? But yet you still see all of these charter schools continue to go. And so I think that you have to have these kind of choices and options for families, and the educational component is very important
Hmm.
for families to really know what is out there, what exists, to dispel some of the rumors. Like you had mentioned, some people think that the vouchers are for charters. They are
Hmm.
not, they are for private. And people may want a smaller situation
Hmm.
and a faith-based situation, and then you got to have that option. You may want the charter, you may want you may love IPS or those donut townships, and that's what you want to do. But education is key. You got to
Hmm.
know the options that you have and then choose wisely.
You mentioned how many schools there are, charter schools in particular, and um, I'm wondering now, especially that you've been a charter and you've gone to private. Are there too many charter schools in Indianapolis?
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. I
There's
mean,
a
you
lot.
look at the data and see. I think that you know it's one thing to just look at data as a snapshot,
Hmm.
but to really understand what a school is doing and per situation, I think it's really situation by situation. And a lot of people only read headlines, but they don't really know the intricate details of what has happened
Hmm.
in these school in these situations. And so, yes, it could be argued. I think that there are maybe too many charter schools or too many schools in general. And that's above my pay grade.
Hmm.
We're staying narrow. This is the opportunity that we have for families, and we think it's one of the best in the state, and it's panning out to be that way.
Did that contribute to your decision to become a private school? That they're already, I mean, like you said, you were in an area where there's where you were over there off of 38th and Keystone Sherman. You had the Genius School. You've got um, Geo with its two buildings right there. You've got Tinley with its buildings right there. Actually, you were in a super
Super
saturated
saturated.
because you've got what's that? United Schools of Indianapolis has a school right there across from Tinley. So
STEM was right there.
yes,
The
there is
scene.
there are a lot. Yeah, now that I think about it, as I'm mapping it out in my head, there are a lot of schools right there.
Yeah.
Did that contribute into your decision to okay, let's do something different and not compete as much for these dollars? Let's get into a different lane.
No, it didn't, because our model is a niche model, and
Hmm.
so we have a very loyal community. I really didn't want anything too big anyway.
Hmm.
We've had iterations of our public experience where we had 600 plus children
Hmm.
and who were responsible for turning around a neighborhood that had been underperforming for decades.
Hmm.
That takes time to do. And what I learned through that process as we were developing the model and changing that community, inspiring that community, was very successful, despite what some of the politics said. It was a very successful experience, and particularly at Geo. And so for us, it was more about wanting more autonomy
Hmm.
and that faith-based piece. Like I said, I had to hide that. I had to rework that into values and
Hmm.
things like that. And now we can just be bold. I'm an ordained minister, and so
Hmm.
I want to lead with my faith, and I want people who understand that. And so, um, really, another component was getting out of educational politics.
Hmm.
When you have all of those schools and you have these organizations that have a whole lot of influence
You're
on this,
talking like Mind Trust, all these type of folks.
all these type of folks,
Okay.
they have a lot of influence. And I'm not naming names, but I'm
Hmm.
just saying
I'll name names.
sometimes though that influence is not necessarily what's best for kids, or has nothing to do with what's happening. There's an agenda
Hmm.
that is playing out,
Hmm.
and I think we need our own institutions.
Hmm.
And so we made a pivot.
What are some of the challenges besides funding of being a private school? Because you're not getting those tax dollars. Well, first, let me ask you: what if you don't have tax dollars? What funds your school?
So this is the big thing, right? We do have tuition,
Hmm.
but that only pays for a portion
Hmm.
of the experience. So what I've learned is that fundraising is a really big deal.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the things that we are focusing on now, is how to fundraise, how to get people to see
Hmm.
this unique movement that is happening and taking place,
Hmm.
and to support it, because it's different, it's unique. And I think that, again, when you compare our results, we are competitive.
Hmm.
We're competitive, and it's
Hmm.
very unique. So I'm hoping to continue to attract those supporters, and to attract those resources, because that's where you have to make up the difference.
What is your enrollment goal? I hear you say you don't want to be a giant school.
Right. All right. I want micro schools. So
Hmm.
the idea is to have a school on the east side, the west side, and then an early elementary center downtown. That's the ultimate goal. And I love children, and I love what our model does as far as changing the trajectory of children's lives. And
Hmm.
so we're not opposed to going back to public at some point, but
Hmm.
um, you know, I really don't want. We're pre-K 7 right now,
Okay.
and we'll add a grade each year until we get to high school.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were at let's say pre-K to 12, I don't think I want more than 300 children.
Okay.
So they're micro schools is what we call them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that particularly the school was developed with Black and brown children in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exclusively for
Mm-hmm.
Black and brown children, but if you look at the data, that's where the most critical data are. And so we want to target that because that is what the city needs. That is what the community needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that being said, a smaller, intimate setting
Mm-hmm.
where we know every child's name, we know every child's situation, we can make what we call individualized genius plans that are very much tailor-made to that child's experience, despite what has happened academically with them in the past, and create a tailor-made situation so that we can accelerate that growth.
Well, I guess being a private school, I guess that means you're not a not-for-profit, or are you?
We're non-for-profit.
You are.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Whether it's a charter school, private school, are schools a business?
There's a business component for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You and the two have to be married,
Right.
right? The business side of things and the operational side, they have to coincide. And that's just the bottom line of it. I know people don't like to hear that, but there are some corporations out there that are only business minded and may not care about the community part of it or really about the educational piece, because there is a lot of money. Education is big business. It's really big business. And so there is that component that has been a concern for people, particularly in the charter world. And but if you look at any model of education, there may have been some controversy around how that corporation is expending their financial resources. And so with that being said, it's all business.
I have a lot of respect for you for answering that question that way, because even when you have a public school, a traditional public school, be it Pike Township or Warren, whoever, there is a business component. There is a business office, and the reality of it is even more competitive because of school choice. So people don't want to talk about money, but you literally do have to fight for funding to stay alive, no matter which version of a school you are.
Yeah.
That is part of running a school, is getting funding, be it fundraising like you have to do in your case, or tuition, or tax dollars, or whatever it is. That's a part of the game that nobody wants to admit that is ingrained as anything else.
That's right. And now with all this choice in all these schools, it's exposing some of the areas where corporations may not have been so lean. They may have been able to be fat because they had all of those resources. Now the children are dispersing to all these different pockets, and so they have to consider, and it's coming to light. And that's happening again in the donuts. That's happening in certainly Center Township, and everybody's fighting for the same children, and they're all our children. And so I'm hoping more so for instead of a mindset of lack. To one of abundance. There's plenty of children for everyone to survive, but we all do have to be good stewards of the financial resource that we get from each child, and it has to be about the community. It really does have to be about the children. And again, sometimes decisions that are made with a business mindset first, as opposed to what is right for the children that we are serving in the community that we're serving.
From a operational and existing standpoint, you even just kind of mentioned it, there's a lot happening in Center Township with charters and public schools. Being private school, do you feel like you're totally separated from that conversation, or is the conversation public, private, charter? This is a conversation about all of us living together.
It needs to be.
Okay.
It needs to be. I think that the charter world, they're getting more attention.
They're loud.
They're loud, right? And again, you have these influencers that are influencing the volume. Private is on its way. Again, there have been rumors that the whole goal is to
make every school private.
Yes, chop down Center Township, chop them down, and you have all these charters, and then charters close, and then you're left with privatized education. We'll see how that goes, but we are one of the first schools to have a foot in both. Maybe the first. I think we are the first, but it has always been my intention to do so, and that is a story that hasn't been told. It has always been my intention to really impact education thoroughly, and that's through public and through private, because families are on both sides of that scale. And so we want to have the option and the opportunity to serve families on both sides of that scale. I think that now with the legislation, with the school vouchers and things like that, the private schools are gaining more attention. And so we're poised in that way. But again, my stance is that all of these models are useful and can be useful, but we do have to trim some of the fat in each one of those components of education.
Now, you have some of those other organizations that, at least on the charter school side, do a lot of influencing and get a lot of attention. Is there something like that that exists in the private school world?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
No coalitions, like you guys don't all get together and like fight together, kind of a thing.
There's some organizations, that share information and share resource, but certainly not to the point of those influencers that we named earlier.
So,
not to my knowledge.
So what I'm hearing from you is private schools, while they are their own thing, they are not as big or as influential in politics as people think that they are.
Again, if you have, say, maybe a cathedral or a rebuff, who has a long history, archdiocese, they're getting a lot of funding and support from alumni and parishioners and things like that. So that may be different, because politics is power, So a school like ours, who is developing, and I don't think there's a lot of private schools that are geared towards Black and brown communities. Again, not exclusive to, but geared towards Black and brown communities. And so, politics is politics, and if you have money, you can play. And that's where the influence comes, I think, a lot of the times.
And I respect and appreciate your honesty, because I understand what you're saying. In the charter school, on the charter school world, individually, do they have power? No, they come together through these coalitions and organizations. But in the private school world, it's even more local. It's who are your alumni, whose parents are going, whose children, I should say, go to that school, and who are their parents, and who do they know. It's the connections, and politicking is made more that way. And so, to your point, a genius school that has been around for 2 years, finding its footing, finding a new location, will not have the same power right now,
not yet,
as a cathedral with a long history and a long line of alumni and current, somebody's dad is on the city council probably, and at the state house, and all these different things. Yes. It's different is the answer.
It's different. We're new to the party. But we're here. We're here.
Being a private school, what are there challenges with resources? Because it's also about scale. So you still have to get textbooks for your students and lunches and things like that. How does all that play out?
There's a trickle down effect to that. So absolutely, because we have to, balance the tuition piece with the gap of not having those traditional public funds. There's some things that we have to pause, parts of the model that maybe in other iterations when we were public that we may have to pause now. And so, yeah, there's some sacrifices that have to be made in the short term or the interim, but we're so even in our second year, we've been able to double. So it's happening. We're patient, and it gives us an opportunity to really look at our model as a whole and prioritize what's necessary for the current moment. And I think that there are some benefits to that too.
Is transportation a part of the success or challenges for a private school as well? Because I know not all. I would say I know some of the private schools offer transportation. Not all of them do.
Yeah, it will, particularly for us, because most of our history has been on the east side or the near west side, and now we're northwest side. And so we do have some transportation options, but that has been an issue. There are some folks who were really diehard about the Genius School and this school model that were so far east they just couldn't make it happen, yet. But we have such loyal folks who are willing to move, to different parts of the city to be a part of this because they know that their children come to our school. The culture is so rich and unique that when they leave, it's like it's just not the same. So we got to figure this out, and we're the kind of people that want to figure it out with the community. So we right now have a school van goes to pick up some children, and ultimately we will get back to a yellow bus.
Is that something that one you've been asked about at all, especially as I was reading this latest plan from some of those charter school influential folks, and they did put private schools, put them as part of this idea that we want transportation for all students in Indianapolis. Have you had any conversations or been approached about anything like that? And what does that mean to you when you hear that? Is that a possibility?
I hope that it's a possibility, because if Indiana is really about choice, then we have to remove whatever the barriers are so that choice is really accessible. So again, with the school vouchers, that's one way that those barriers have been removed for families who want that and couldn't afford it otherwise. And now the other part is, well, maybe I can access the tuition either through my own financial well-being or through those choice vouchers, but it's just too far and I can't make it over there because I got to work. Those are some of the things. And so, yes, if there are ways that schools can collaborate, and this is what I meant by being innovatively collaborative, then that would benefit all schools. Well, maybe not. Maybe that would hurt some schools because now, again, you're splitting the pie.
Right. And maybe I'm sure there's someone who would love to go to the Genius School, but they're going to the school closest to them because of transportation.
Most families send their children somewhere based on proximity.
Right. What people also fail to realize is how large Indianapolis is in land. People always say, we're not as big as Chicago or New York City. Actually, in land, we're bigger than them. To be at where you are on the northwest side, but be living at 46th and Midhofer, still the same city.
Yeah.
And so to get somebody across that distance is quite a big task. So in your case, a barrier, unless you're a school over there where it's like, well, you can't really get anywhere else, so come on over.
And that has been one of the challenges, for many families. I think that I'd say probably for at least 75 to 100 families that have had that barrier.
What's your enrollment this year?
We're about 50.
50? Okay. And the goal for this year?
No more than 75.
Okay. So you're right. You're right on in. And of course, the goal.
We got a little more than 50 now, and no more than 75.
I say there's still space.
Yes. We're still enrolling, particularly in our early elementary model.
And then So do I hear? What is the top grade you want to go to?
We are pre-K 7 right
Mm-hmm.
now, and over the next 5 years, we'll be pre-K 12.
So
So we'll add a grade each year.
if someone is in the seventh grade now, they could graduate from you
They could. They
eventually.
could. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's what I'm here. Okay. Um,
And we have some awesome examples of what the model can do
mhm.
for children. For instance, we just promoted our first generation. So from kinder to six, now young lady in seven, she started with us and was, behind
Mhm.
academically as a kindergartner, and is now in the top 95 percentile in the nation academically. Captain of our martial arts team. That's
Mhm.
another one of our innovations. All of our children take martial arts as leadership development and to learn how to defend themselves and body mastery and respect and patience. All of those values that come through this vehicle of martial arts.
What do you think was the success besides having a smaller class size and being able to give more intimate time to that student? What did you guys do that allowed her to find that success?
So the model, it particularly is speaking to the individual. We have some, I think, very innovative practices that target the autonomic nervous system. So we're trying to make sure that children understand themselves, how their brains work, which is again an innovation. We are blending neuroscience, cultural relevance. So not only does she see herself reflected in the curriculum, not only is she learning about Black history,
Mm-hmm.
but we're also teaching her about her brain and how her brain works. And so meditation is a big component of what we do. And again, the science of meditation, the children are understanding it. I could bring a student here, and I'm talking second grade,
Mm-hmm.
and they could explain to you what the autonomic nervous system is and what the parasympathetic nervous system versus the sympathetic nervous system does, and how meditation helps us to get ourselves regulated. And so this is a very prominent part, that science piece and the project-based learning element of what we do is very important to me, to help children want to learn more and to gain curiosity on themselves. That's very important. How do we develop curiosity? And so project-based learning is a big deal. I like to say that if there's a quote that I repeat all the time: if I just hear something, I'll forget it.
Mm-hmm.
If I see it, I'll remember. But if I do it, then I'll understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to take the philosophy, that intellectual knowledge, that theoretical data of just the book stuff, and tie that with some kind of experience that will bring that all together and make it real.
Um, are those things that some of the things you just named, are those things that you would have been able to do as, let me rephrase that question. Would you have had that same success with that particular student if you were a charter school?
Well, that student was with us for some of that charter time.
Okay.
So the answer is yes. That model can work
Mm-hmm.
on both sides of that scale.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why, as a network, ultimately, we could do both.
Mm-hmm.
So the model is consistent, but it's concentrated as a private school. Again, I don't have to hide anything.
Mm-hmm.
We can really be direct about what our foundations are. And there is a little bit more independence as a private school.
Mm-hmm.
And I just believe that we, as a community, we really need our own institutions. There's nothing wrong with Black children.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at the data and we understand, and we're wondering, well, why is it
Mm-hmm.
like this? But something has happened to our community,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a systemic thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an institutional
Mm-hmm.
circumstance. And so we need our own institutions
Mm-hmm.
to be able to combat that. And here's an example of where we have one. And so people ask me all the time, hey, about the cost of private school, even with the vouchers. And my response is, I don't think we can afford not to invest in our own institutions, and
Mm-hmm.
institutions like this, or building blocks, or something like that.
In this climate, in this political day and age that we are in, I hear you that this is a school that is not only for Black and brown children, but you do take a focus on Black and brown children and where they come from and what they need. In this political climate, is that harder to do? Where we have literally there's going to be a lawsuit, or it was a lawsuit that just filed that the state of Indiana, the attorney general wants to make sure that there's no DEI in federal contracts, and DEI, and the governor doesn't want that anywhere in state things. Does that make it harder, or how do you navigate that goal with these obstacles?
I'm a private school, so I'm independent,
Okay.
and we can lead with our hearts,
Okay.
and we do, So
That would be a benefit of being a private school right now.
absolutely. We're not swayed. Again, got out of public because of the politics, and we don't have to be slave to those politics anymore. What we believe is right, and what we believe is fair and necessary for the community that we serve, we can be bold about that, and we are.
So if charters have a lot of autonomy, private schools have even more autonomy, but then you also have a bigger responsibility to get fundraisers and supporters to back your mission.
That's correct.
As you eventually expand with your micro schools to the center of the city and to the east side of the city, what do you think those will be, private schools or charter schools?
They'll ultimately both.
Okay.
Ultimately both.
Okay. How soon do you think you'd be ready to do that?
We could do it next year. The model works.
Right.
The model works, but we'll slow walk it. That's just fine, and continue to build and to continue to attract. We're in a whole different side of the city, a whole different side of town now. So more people now in this district are learning about the Genius School, and like I said, it's so humbling to know that families love what we're developing and love this movement so much that they're willing to literally move to a different side of town just so their children can be, our model can be a one-stop shop, and so we're going to continue with that. And then also, like I said, early elementary center downtown, then those children can kind of go to either once we have those PK-12 models on either. But public is not out of the question for us because I'm a son of the city, and I want to serve the community in any way that I possibly can. I'm put on the planet to teach, and that's what I want to do. And I don't want the politics or the different iterations of education to limit me from reaching any family who would want a model like this one to be part of a movement like this.
It's very interesting to listen to you describe all the things that private schools are versus what people think they are, because I've even got some clarity myself just listening to you speak since you've been here. And one of the things that that sticks with me is, well, I guess I would say, kind of feels to me that you kind of are getting a disservice from all the politics and all that because it's a distraction. You're no longer in that realm of charter schools, but you still kind of get lumped into it. But you're a private school, but then you're not a big or long-lasting private school, so then you're not really part of that conversation where they can kind of, jump on the phone and say, "Hey, we need X, Y, and Z."
Yeah.
You're in an interesting little pocket of your existence. And one, I also don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that any of the private schools in town have any type of focus on Black or brown students.
I think there's one that I'm aware of, and that's Building Blocks Academy. Has been a mainstay for a long time, and I think Holy Angels.
Holy Angels, yes.
25th Martin Luther King have also, and so we are the newest private school.
Small group still.
Very, very small group.
Yeah.
Considering an extremely small group, and those organizations have stood the test of time. But as you said, I'm in a very unique position. We're situated very uniquely. given the transition. And a lot of people still don't understand how that happened. They think that we took public funds to create this private school, and that's just not the case. That's just not the case. We were savvy, right, about how we did that, and because it was always part of the plan, and a lot of people don't realize that. But man, I'll tell you what, the experience that we've had as a charter and coming through the ranks the way that we did over there and getting to here, that's a book. And I would guarantee that's another conversation that we should have to talk about that, because it is extremely it's a wild ride, man. And there's a lot in there, uncharted waters, if I could say.
Definitely a lot of the things that I just know of the headlines and the processes that I'm learning about, the authorizers, the charter school board, the Indianapolis Office of Education Innovation, and all these different things. So as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing lots of the pluses and benefits of being, if I'm going to operate a private school. I hear why that would make sense. One of the things that people say on the charter school side is, well, the schools that fail close, and that's part of the process. I don't know what you feel about that statement, but then people also would say, especially when the headlines where you switch, people would say, well, the Genius School couldn't cut it, or they weren't going to be renewed, or all these different things, so they switched to being a private school. What do you say to that?
I say people need to understand the facts. And again, some of these influencers have a lot of resources to spin the story. We were successful at every point along the way, particularly those last 2 years when it was a mutual non-renewal with IPS because there were so many issues that were going on there at the dig school. And so that was a mutual, that's not reported though, that it was a mutual meeting where we said we're going to go our separate ways.
And why is that? Why is that not reported?
That's a great question by you.
Because nobody asked?
I don't know if anyone wanted to ask. Just one thing was reported from one perspective, but ours wasn't. And again, this is politics. So there was a reason why that it wasn't reported. Otherwise, it would have been, right? There's no shame there, right? We're going to go our separate ways, and we did this thing. Congratulations, and we're going to go our separate ways. That's the way it should have been, and it wasn't. I think I've been, as a charter, the most evaluated school, probably of all charters. And so once we got to GEO, outside of the IPS innovation agreement, you'll see the reports that we were one of the top 10 schools for Black and brown children because the model works. And again, there were some issues that we had to deal with when we were part of the innovation schools with IPS, and it just wasn't a good fit. And so, again, I'm not sure why the reporting was the way that it was, but I just know that politics has to do with it, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get out of the innovation agreement or not renew that innovation agreement. And then the mayor's office, we were going to separate from the mayor's office as our authorizer. And again, there was more politics. So people think that they didn't want us, and that's just not the truth. We were going to go a different direction, and ultimately decided once this process was unfolding, and there was some issues with the current authorizer that we were interviewing with, and got all the way through the process. And so we ended up saying, okay, well, we're going to go private. And again, we would not have been able to do that if that was not already in our desire to do so, because that required an entirely new corporation, a new business. And so that stuff is just not reported, and then people conflate it, and things are reported that are just erroneous.
Because you were at Geo for how many years?
2 years.
2 years.
Mhm.
2 years there. Now you've been private. You're in your second year of being private.
Right.
And then the over at Diggs, what year was that? From what year to what year?
17, 18 to 23, I think.
In each, and we'll hear about this because we'll have some IPS innovation folks in here soon to talk. But what is that? Sounds like the most out of the three. Let me not lead you to a question. Let me rephrase the question. Of the different iterations that the Genius School has existed, which is the most difficult?
Neighborhood school work is tough. That's tough. You know, again, here's the thing. For Geo,
Mhm.
right? And I explain this, most families are going to send their child to a school based on proximity.
Mhm.
We know that. When you have a model like we have now as a private school, or even when we're at Geo, and you say, hey, I like what you guys are doing,
Mhm.
and I want my child to go there, and I'll send my child there from this side of town because I like what you all are doing, and I want to
Mhm.
be part of that. That's different than my kid is going to go there because we live 3 doors down.
Mhm.
That's just a much different situation, right?
Mhm.
It's already a different commitment to education. At a neighborhood school, there were some families that we would see at the beginning
Mhm.
for the enrollment piece,
Mhm.
and then never see again, or
Mhm.
unless I went to knock on that door,
Mhm.
to
Because you were just there. The only reason they go to school is because you're there.
yes, could care less about the movement that is happening. We were still able to galvanize that community.
Mhm.
There was some fire that was happening
Mhm.
over at Dig School. And again, I believe that politics really got in the way of the progress that was being made there.
Mhm.
Um, for a school that in a community that has been underperforming for decades, and you
Mhm.
have all of the things, you have the violence in the
Mhm.
community. There were
Mhm.
11 murders by October
Mhm.
within a mile or so radius of the school's front door. Children are walking past yellow tape,
Mhm.
every day to school. That impacts, right? You have the food desert. This was the largest food desert per capita in the country at one point,
Mhm.
right there. The mental health issues that were there. All of these social issues that create symptoms, right, within the community. We had to address. It wasn't just about whether or not the kids could pass this brand new iLearn test
Mhm.
or not. Yes, that matters. The academics absolutely do matter, but they're more than just those snapshots.
Mhm.
And so our growth wasn't reported. It wasn't reported that I was telling people, hey, why is it that our children, you want me to turn around this school,
Mhm.
but our children on these buses are coming to school an hour and a half late every day? And I've documented, we're having these conversations to the point where I believe this is a civil rights issue,
Mhm.
because other schools aren't having their kids arrive to school an hour and a half, and we have processes that matter.
Mhm.
Our morning rituals, our mores, and our things that we're doing
Mhm.
really matter to set the tone for learning, and again to offset some of the chronic stress that the children are experiencing through the poverty and all of the symptoms of poverty in
Mhm.
that area. And so that was a big deal. I put us into a study. It was a lead study,
Mhm.
and I just knew there was something different about the
Mhm.
children.
Mhm.
Come to find out, there's 4 times the legal limit of lead in
Mhm.
the water,
In that area.
and we were still able to show growth. We were getting our kids lead tested, so there was a lot that we were up against, and we had 2 mayor-sponsored evaluations
Mhm.
that met the standard. Our first one didn't go too well. That was the second year, and we were making some changes. That first evaluation was held in September. School
Mhm.
just started.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So no, we didn't have it all together that second year, but we were on pace.
Mhm.
And then the third year, all meet standard. The fourth year, all meet standard. That stuff is never, or exceed standard.
Mhm.
That's never considered.
Mhm.
Not to mention, we did this work
Mhm.
through a pandemic.
Mhm.
Okay, so traditionally, if you look at just the history of turnaround transformation schools across the country, it's going to take a generation. It's going to take 5 to 7 years to do that. We weren't given that time, and I could see the writing on the wall, and that's the reason why we decided to mutually not renew that innovation contract. I would have loved to stay at Diggs. You look at that school before we got there and after we got there, and everything that we put into it. You know, and it's Diggs School. You know, Diggs School is very historically relevant to me and the community. And so we want to inspire that school back to greatness. And I think that we did it for the time that we were there, despite what was reported. If you're looking at just proficiency, right, we're looking at just proficiency, and that's where they try to get us. And just proficiency, well, the children were behind when we got them, you know, and far behind. So it's going to take time. But you look at that kindergarten group, right? And now we see with those who are still with us that the model unequivocally, undoubtedly is powerful and it works. And we're teaching them more than just ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, reading, writing, arithmetic. The things that we're instilling in these children change the trajectory of lives and will be with them for the rest of their lives.
Well, Shaquan, I feel like I'm just getting you warmed up.
Oh, yes.
Because because we're out of time, but we have to come back and continue this conversation about schools, because you've said lots of things that I know to be true, even related to some other schools. Where I know of a school in town that is a charter school that was showing great progress. But the only reason that school isn't open today is because politics in another school wanted their building. And so all of those factors behind the scenes do not get always reported for a number of reasons. People don't know. People don't want to tell that story. People don't want to share that story. But I do thank you for sharing. And it sounds like maybe somebody should have came and talked to you a little while ago.
We tried, but I appreciate you for the journalism that you're doing. And the community needs it. So I commend you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, sir. Before we go, we got a minute left. Tell everybody where the Genius School is.
Genius School is North Lafayette Road, 7860 North Lafayette Road at New Life Worship Center. And we are pre-K through 7th grade this year. And again, we are at the intersection of faith, cultural relevance, and academic excellence.
All right. Shaquan Eli, founder and chancellor of the Genius School. Sir, thank you so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate you.
My pleasure.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Fox 59 Tonight. I'm Cameron Riddle. Talk to me on Sunday morning on my radio show on 106.7 WTLC and Hot 100.9 for open lines, where you get to be part of that conversation as well. For now, thank you for watching us here on Fox 59 Tonight. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube and download our new app. We'll be back here on another night at 8 o'clock. Good night.